see that they are more willing to protect other cultures of women. That's just, even when you talk about what happens when a woman goes missing, or when a black woman is killed versus when a white woman is killed, it's a different course of action. So at what point do we say that this is a community matter and we're just not passing it on to other people? Like,
With regard to your topic, right? Because you're dealing with two things. You're dealing with pretty privilege, and you're also dealing with being protected. Now, the whole argument about being protected, I mean, because you hear a lot of people say we're not being protected, we're not being protected. Um, I don't want to dismiss it, but I'm saying the way it's framed is kind of abstract, if you know what I'm, if I'm making any sense. So when you're saying being protected, can you be more specific? Are you talking about molestation? Just be a little bit more specific in what you're talking about, and then we can get into the meat and potatoes.
right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So when I'm talking about protection right now, I'm talking about how a lot of men don't necessarily want to protect women unless they are attractive. So that's really what I'm talking about. And that's like bringing the pretty privilege with the protection.
Mm.
So in essence, that has to do with several times a lot of protection, but usually we're talking about physical protection, because it was brought up on another show. I think it was like that last show or a couple shows we did, where we talked about how men, and there were men who actually said that I wouldn't stop and protect a woman if I wasn't actually in a relationship with her, or I wasn't actually trying to have sex with her. So I think we are talking about more of physical protection, as women in, I guess, in our age bracket. But then when we spread it out, elderly women are not necessarily being protected, and younger women are not necessarily being protected as well, because there's a lot of things that are happening in the homes or behind closed doors at grandmama or auntie's house or uncle's house that's not being addressed either. So protection starts, it has to start at a young age, but where does protection usually, where who are we more geared towards protecting? Like some.
Okay, so when you say that pretty women are receiving more protection, I mean,
Mhm.
like, what are you basing this off of? Like what's the black and white, or is this just anecdotal? Is this just your own personal experience? Because, like I said, I'm pretty sure there are a lot of pretty women who feel like they're not being protected, that they're being harassed, that
Mhm.
that men are sexually aggressive with them as well. So I'm just trying to understand, like, where are you getting this? That I do agree that pretty privilege exists, but when I think of pretty privilege, what I think of is women who are pretty could get away with a lot more than someone who's less attractive. That's what I think when I think about pretty privilege. Now, the whole thing about protection, yeah, you can say that some guys may have more motivation to look after somebody who's attractive, but maybe they have ulterior motives.
Right.
But I still feel like women who are attractive may feel as though they're not as protected, just as much as someone who's not as attractive.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do agree that, and to answer the question, your first question. So, yes, it's not necessarily my personal experience, even though there are things that did happen to me as when I was younger where I did not feel protected, and people did know certain things were happening, but I did not feel protected. I was not being protected. As opposed to when I would see other girls my age in other cultures, there were some people who were standing up for them, or even people in their community seem to at least do something. But I think also we have to understand a lot of things are hidden. A lot of things, it's not something that I went around and said, hey, this is happening to me. So sometimes we don't even know that it's happening. But I think it's, for me, like, since I'm married, I do have my husband, but at the same time, I don't necessarily see that men are going to necessarily step up and say, hey, I'm going to protect you. But I see that they are more willing to protect other cultures of women. That's just, even when you talk about what happens when a woman goes missing, or when a black woman is killed versus when a white woman is killed, it's a different course of action. So at what point do we say that this is a community matter and we're just not passing it on to other people? Like, how do we put this within our community and say, hey, within our community, let's start having the conversation of actually protecting, and across the board from a young age to an older age.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I do think that I would say it's more of a family thing. Like, most guys are going to protect their wife and their children.
Mm-hmm.
And when there is a sense of community, then everybody looks out for one another. But um, the, the foundation of any community is families, and all of our families are pretty much broken. I mean, like, most families are not intact. Most families have,
Right.
like, 70-80% being raised by, most households in our neighborhood, 70-80% are single family households, single parent households. So we don't really have strong communities. So it shouldn't be a surprise that some of the things that are taking place um, are taking place.
Yeah. And I definitely agree with that. And I think it's just the conversation to be had, because we are, like, I didn't have my father growing up in my household. So, I didn't have that protection, but I had lots of uncles and lots of cousins around me who could have protected me from some things that I should not have gone through. But at the same time, that's why I say the conversation, when are we'll start having that conversation, because they would probably be more inclined to help their daughters, someone that their relationship, their wives and things like that. Because I know that my husband, he's going to do what he has to do for his daughters. And just like my cousins and my uncles, I'm pretty sure that they would do what they have to do for their daughters. But because I didn't have my dad in my house, it's it was a little bit different of some of the things that I did have to go through. And so I think that is kind of the conversation, like, are we only protecting people that we are immediately close to? And if that's the case, and we're just saying we have to fend for ourselves, then what is this, like, are we really trying to build community? Because a lot of us say that we're trying to build community, but is that really the case?